A high school girl stands precariously on the very edge of the rooftop. The wind gusts against the concrete, tugging at her school uniform and causing the fabric of her skirt and collar to flutter violently. She looks out into the distance, her posture tense. Below her, on the safe side of the ledge, a teenage boy in the same school uniform looks up at her. He suddenly breaks the silence by shouting a blunt, physical proposition toward her, asking to engage in an intimate sexual act. The girl's face flushes a deep crimson instantly. She turns back toward him, screaming that he is a complete pervert for even thinking of such a thing. The boy, however, looks back with a straight face, loudly denying that his thoughts are perverse at all. The girl continues to shout, pointing out the obvious. He just openly invited her to sleep with him, which is the definition of lecherous behavior. The boy looks genuinely puzzled. He addresses her by name, Kurumi, and asks her a pointed question. He reminds her that she was just about to end her life by jumping. Kurumi knits her brows in confusion, asking what his point is. She wonders aloud if he thinks she is obligated to have sex before she dies. She snaps at him, labeling him not just a pervert, but a total piece of human trash. The boy raises his voice to drown out her insults, insisting she has it all wrong. He explains that his feelings are rooted in love, and it is precisely because he loves her that he made such a bold request. Kurumi's brow furrows deeper. She stares at him, completely unable to process the logic behind his words. Seeing her hesitation, the boy tries a different angle. He admits he knows why she climbed up here, to use the sunset as a final, beautiful backdrop for her heart's end. But he explains that he is intentionally trying to ruin that moment. He warns her that if she chooses to jump now, her final memory and the story of her death will be forever tied to the words of a lecherous man. He shouts at her, asking if she is really okay with that being her legacy. Kurumi flinches. The realization hits her hard, and her expression wavers. The boy presses on, stating again that he loves her. He mentions an interview he read in a magazine where she spoke about her love for beautiful scenery. He points a finger at her and yells, asking if this ugly, awkward encounter is truly the end she envisioned for herself. Kurumi is visibly shaken. She never expected anyone to go to such lengths, or use such a bizarre tactic to intervene. The boy remains stoic. He doesn't care if she hates him for the rest of her life, as long as he succeeds in keeping her from hurting herself. Seeing her resolve crumble, he offers a small smile and gestures for her to come closer, repeating his request for intimacy. Kurumi stands frozen for a moment before shaking her head. She tells him flatly that it isn't going to happen. The boy shrugs, telling her that if she refuses, then her very last conversation on Earth will simply be this, being hit on by a creep. Kurumi clutches her head, groaning and shaking her head repeatedly, desperate to escape that reality. The boy senses his plan is working. He beckons her to step away from the ledge and come toward him. However, Kurumi's expression suddenly shifts from frustration to profound sadness. She softly asks him why he is going through all this trouble just to stop her. He repeats that he likes everything about her and has already mentally prepared himself to be her boyfriend. Kurumi blushes, her guard dropping slightly. She asks if that means he is willing to do anything she asks. The boy's demeanor turns cold and blunt. He tells her no without a second thought, stating there is no need to clarify because he won't be her servant. Kurumi is taken aback, confused by his sudden shift. The boy explains that he isn't looking for a lopsided, exploitative relationship, but one where they support each other as equals. He then clarifies his ultimate suggestion. If she wants that kind of bond, she should marry him instead. Kurumi stands there, completely stunned by the proposal. The boy challenges her, asking if she will accept a proposal from a pervert like him or reject it. Kurumi stammers, realizing that both options feel ridiculous in this context. The boy encourages her to just accept it, but she still voices her refusal. Despite her verbal rejection, Kurumi finally climbs over the safety railing and steps back onto the solid floor of the rooftop. The boy immediately begins talking about building a happy, harmonious family together. Kurumi snaps back, reminding him that she never actually accepted his proposal. He asks why she bothered coming back over the railing then. She simply looks away, muttering that she just changed her mind. The boy smiles. Then, with a mischievous glint in his eye, he asks her one more time to sleep with him. Kurumi responds by planting a firm kick into his stomach. She tells him that a porn brain, like his, belongs in hell. She takes a deep breath, sighing as she looks at him. She admits that she has never met anyone quite like him before. A small, genuine smile plays on her lips. She asks mockingly if it's okay for her to take a little bit of the love and affection he mentioned earlier. She gives him a playful, teasing look before turning toward the rooftop exit. As she walks away, she calls out a goodbye. The boy watches her go, stating aloud to the empty air that he is completely obsessed with her. In the past, when the world seemed to turn against the boy for the simple act of reading a girl's magazine, he felt the crushing weight of isolation. As he stood there, wishing he could simply vanish into thin air to escape the mockery, Kurumi appeared. She stepped forward to defend him, an act of unexpected kindness that left him utterly stunned. Now, Kasamiya wakes up in his bed, the morning light filtering into the room. He rubs his eyes sleepily, the remnants of that nostalgic dream still lingering in his mind. He realizes it was a memory from a time that feels both distant and vivid. Later that morning, Kasamiya walks through the bustling school corridor. He spots Kurumi ahead and calls out a cheerful good morning. Kurumi acknowledges him, returning the greeting with a polite nod. Kasamiya observes her closely, noting her lack of energy. He comments that she looks unusually lethargic, teasingly adding that he had specifically prepared his ears this morning so that her voice could vibrate against his eardrums. Kurumi frowns, telling him that such a comment is disgusting, yet she admits with a sigh that this strange behavior might actually be his particular charm. Suddenly, a boisterous voice calls out from behind them. It is Kirishima, the school's golden boy, known by everyone for his flawless looks and charismatic presence. Kirishima throws a heavy arm around Kasamiya's neck, gripping him tightly in a friendly but forceful headlock. He greets him by a mocking nickname, Stress-me-a-kun. Kasamiya struggles slightly, asking what kind of ridiculous name that is. Kirishima laughs, doubling down and stating that it is a fitting title for someone who seems so perpetually stressed out. Kasamiya looks exasperated. He mutters to himself that he desperately wants to take back the time he ever described Kirishima as a man with a perfect personality. Kirishima turns to Kurumi, asking for her opinion on the nickname. To Kasamiya's shock, Kurumi agrees, commenting that being called Stress-me-a-kun is indeed quite pathetic. Kasamiya gawks at her, betrayed that she has joined forces with Kirishima's teasing. Kirishima then announces that he needs to borrow Kasamiya for a private chat. He looks at Kurumi, asking if she minds if he takes him away for a moment. Kurumi shrugs indifferently, stating that Kasamiya is nobody special to her, so there is absolutely no need to ask for her permission. The metaphorical red light of their interaction flashes as Kirishima pulls Kasamiya away, leaving Kurumi behind in the hallway. Once they are out of earshot, Kirishima's playful tone shifts. He asks Kasamiya what is really going on. He notes that while Kasamiya is usually a bit high-strung, his current behavior has pushed far past the normal limits of stress. Kasamiya feigns ignorance, asking for an example. Kirishima points specifically to the way Kasamiya talks to Koga Kurumi, urging his friend to learn how to read the atmosphere and tone things down. Kasamiya's face hardens. He tells Kirishima sharply that he doesn't need to be lectured on how to read a room. Kirishima pauses, scratching his head in frustration and letting out a long sigh. Kasamiya continues, his voice low and serious. He explains that if everyone else is content to just stand by and watch Kurumi suffer in silence, then he is perfectly fine with being called stressed or even crazy for stepping in. Hearing this, Kirishima's expression softens. He tells Kasamiya that he finally understands what is going on in his head. Kasamiya's eyes light up with hope, and he asks if Kirishima truly gets it. Kirishima smiles warmly and nods, reminding him that they are best friends. Kasamiya exhales a sigh of pure relief, offering a sincere word of thanks. In the distance, Kurumi watches the two of them interact. She thinks to herself that this would be a touching moment of male bonding, if only one of them wasn't a total stress case who had out of nowhere asked her to sleep with him. Kasamiya, feeling emboldened by his friend's support, looks at Kirishima and confesses honestly that he truly likes Kurumi, hoping for a final word of validation. However, Kirishima looks him dead in the eye and tells him that, despite their friendship, that part of his logic is still completely incomprehensible. At the stroke of noon, the lunch bell echoes through the school, signaling the midday break. Kasamiya stands up immediately and makes his way toward Kurumi, who remains seated quietly at her desk. He leans over and invites her to have lunch with him, but Kurumi looks away, her face flushed with deep embarrassment as she quickly declines. Kasamiya nods as if he accepts her refusal, but then, to her confusion, he pulls up a chair and begins to unpack his lunchbox right there at her desk. Kurumi stares at him, bewildered by the contradiction of him seemingly giving up while refusing to leave. When she asks what he is doing, Kasamiya simply states that he is driven by love. Kurumi scoffs at the answer, calling it ridiculous. Kasamiya opens his bento to reveal onigiri. He picks one up and offers it to Kurumi, then takes a bite of his own, chewing slowly as a look of genuine concern crosses his face. He asks her if he has made a mistake, wondering if perhaps she dislikes pickled plums. If she does, he offers to eat them all himself. Kurumi clarifies that it isn't about the plums, but the situation itself feels perverted to her. Kasamiya is genuinely shocked and asks for an explanation. Kurumi explains that if she were to eat the onigiri he just touched and bit into, it would essentially be an indirect kiss. Kasamiya stands up abruptly, his eyes widening. He declares that if that's the case, he'll eat the whole thing quickly, so he can move on to kissing her for real without any hesitation. Kurumi lets out a long sigh, convinced that this boy is truly stressed out of his mind. Despite herself, she giggles, admitting that his behavior is incredibly unsettling. Kasamiya freezes, watching her laugh. Her face is slightly red, and he finds the sight so captivating that he reaches out and cups her face with both of his hands. Kurumi flinches, feeling uncomfortable, and asks what he is doing. Kasamiya answers with total sincerity that they should probably just get married. Kurumi's shock returns as she wonders what on earth is wrong with his brain. Suddenly, muffled snickers and whispers ripple through the classroom. The atmosphere shifts, and Kurumi's expression turns gloomy. Seeing the change, Kasamiya asks what's wrong. Kurumi tells him coldly that it would be better if he didn't talk to her at all. She stands up, pulls open the classroom door, and disappears into the hallway. Kasamiya starts to follow her, but a heavy hand lands on his shoulder. He turns to find a burly man, a teacher who addresses him by name. The sensei tells Kasamiya he needs to talk, ignoring Kasamiya's protests that he is in a hurry. The teacher explains that the homeroom teacher is deeply worried because Kurumi is becoming increasingly isolated in class and has stopped speaking to anyone. He demands to know what is going on with her. Kasamiya knows he cannot easily explain the complexities of her suicidal thoughts to a teacher, so he simply blurts out that the reason is love before rushing back to the classroom. When Kasamiya slides the classroom door open, his heart sinks. He sees Kurumi's desk covered in cruel, hateful graffiti. He clenches his fists, his body trembling with rage at the difficult reality Kurumi is enduring. In the background, a group of girls gossip loudly, calling Kurumi a loser and complaining that Kasamiya is being too dramatic. They whisper that he will eventually get bored of her. From across the room, Kirishima watches with a pained, frustrated expression, silently mouthing an apology. A while later, Kurumi returns to her seat to find Kasamiya sitting in her chair. He looks up and mentions a historical anecdote about Toyotomi Hideyoshi warming Oda Nobunaga's sandals so they wouldn't be cold. Kurumi looks at him blankly, so Kasamiya explains that he has been sitting there to warm up her seat for her. Kurumi calls him an idiot, but Kasamiya doubles down, joking that he is the Hideyoshi to her Nobunaga, essentially her devoted husband. He stands up to let her sit. Kurumi sits down and mutters that the chair is only lukewarm. Kasamiya acts offended, wondering how that's possible when his love for her is burning so fiercely. Kurumi blushes, calling his words disgusting and telling him once again to stop talking to her. Kasamiya just smiles and asks if they can walk home together. Kurumi refuses, saying it's impossible. Kasamiya asks why, stating he simply wants to walk with the person he likes. Kurumi blushes deeper and mutters, whatever. As they walk outside, the air is biting. Kasamiya shivers, mentioning how much he hates the cold. Kurumi asks him why he keeps trying to talk to her, and he gives his usual answer, because he likes her. Kurumi grows serious, insisting that he shouldn't be seen with her because she brings trouble to those around her. Kasamiya shakes his head, telling her he just wants to spend time with her and stay by her side forever. A gust of wind sweeps between them, and tears begin to track down Kurumi's cheeks. She looks at him and softly asks if it's really okay for him to be with her. Kasamiya replies that he should be the one asking for her permission. Kurumi finally offers a small, genuine smile and says it's okay. Captivated by her smile, Kasamiya immediately asks her to marry him again. Kurumi ignores the proposal entirely and asks if they are actually going to walk home together or not. Kasamiya, pushing his luck, asks if they can hold hands. Kurumi tells him not to get ahead of himself. Not deterred, Kasamiya asks if they can exchange contact information. Kurumi just sighs, wondering how he could possibly think that far ahead. Kurumi is asleep on the sofa while holding Kasamiya closely. Her arms remain wrapped around him in a way that looks natural, yet Kasamiya's body stays stiff the entire time. He feels extremely tense and nervous, unable to understand what is actually happening in this moment, and his thoughts keep drifting without finding any clear answer. Earlier at school, Kasamiya spends time talking to Kurumi about serious matters, including how many children they might want to have someday, and how they could plan to pay for a house through a mortgage system. He speaks earnestly and keeps explaining his ideas, while Kurumi only listens quietly. She shows no interest in responding, choosing instead to remain silent and detached from the topic. Kasamiya then shifts the conversation to something more ordinary. He wonders whether Kurumi brings a lunchbox that day, explaining through his behavior that food from the convenience store often upsets his stomach. His attention moves to Kurumi's lunchbox, and he notices it directly. From his expression, it is clear that the menu inside looks appealing to him, and he feels tempted to try it himself. Kurumi refuses without hesitation. Kasamiya tries to brush off her refusal and continues persuading her in his own way. He conveys the idea that if he ever learns how to cook good food himself, he would definitely share it with Kurumi. Despite that, Kurumi firmly maintains her stance and makes it clear that for now, she still has no intention of sharing her food with him. At the same time, a girl stands between the two of them. She appears visibly irritated, clearly unhappy about being ignored by both Kurumi and Kasamiya. Kurumi and Kasamiya look at the girl with confused expressions, and then both of them fall silent. The girl's frustration only grows as she continues to feel disregarded. Eventually, Kasamiya acknowledges her presence and asks whether she has any business with them. His attitude emphasizes that he believes he and Kurumi are sharing an intimate moment, and he considers the girl's presence nothing more than an interruption. The girl reacts with a disgusted expression and feels unsettled by the situation. Kasamiya then questions why she keeps staring at him and wonders if there is something strange about him. The girl is Ogura Shurabe, known as the one who spreads rumors about Kurumi within the girls' circle at school. Ogura harbors a deep dislike toward Kurumi. She does not truly care whether Kurumi is being affectionate with a strange boy, but she finds their behavior disruptive and dislikes how Kurumi continues to cause unnecessary commotion. Kurumi denies the assumption being made, which catches Ogura off guard. Kurumi explains that there is no affectionate behavior happening at all, and that she simply happens to be together with Kasamiya by coincidence. She even agrees with Ogura, feeling that being intimate with someone like Kasamiya would indeed be strange. Those words leave Kasamiya feeling deeply hurt. Despite Kurumi's statement, Kasamiya remains convinced that she actually wants affection, even if she denies it outwardly. Ogura grows increasingly annoyed, unwilling to be ignored by the two of them any longer. Tension rises between Ogura and Kasamiya asserts that Ogura should leave. Ogura responds by stating that while she hates Kurumi, she hates Kasamiya even more. Kasamiya readily agrees and admits that he also happens to dislike Ogura. Kurumi steps in and tells Kasamiya to stop going too far with his behavior. Kasamiya accepts this and responds with an exaggerated gesture of respect. On the other hand, Kurumi quietly feels that Kasamiya has unexpectedly shown a cool side of himself. Kurumi then begins to walk away. Kasamiya reacts immediately and wonders where she is going. Kurumi responds with the notion that such a question should not be directed at a woman in the first place. After some time passes, a male student is seen wiping the chalkboard inside the classroom. The sound of footsteps echoes through the room, revealing Kurumi's arrival. The boy indicates that the previous lesson period has already ended. Kurumi enters the classroom soaked from head to toe, her posture lowered as she walks in quietly. Ogura reacts with a small, mocking laugh. Kasamiya approaches Ogura and expresses his hostility toward her, showing clear aggression in his attitude and conveying intense resentment. Ogura questions the sudden change in Kasamiya's behavior, unable to understand his reaction. At the same moment, Kurumi appears to be cold, her body trembling as the dampness clings to her clothes. Seeing this, Kasamiya removes his jacket and places it over Kurumi's wet body, covering her carefully. He then suggests that they should go home together. Kurumi agrees, and the two of them head toward the exit. Ogura is displeased by this development and continues muttering curses under her breath as she watches them leave. Kasamiya and Kurumi get into a taxi and eventually arrive at Kurumi's apartment. This time, Kurumi allows Kasamiya to come inside. She excuses herself first, intending to take a shower. While waiting, Kasamiya expresses an inappropriate eagerness to help her, but Kurumi reacts with visible irritation. Her reaction makes it unmistakably clear that she would respond with violence if he dared to step into the bathroom. Kasamiya only smiles in response, wearing an overly optimistic expression and holding on to the idea of sharing the moment with her. Kurumi's annoyance deepens. Realizing there is nothing he can actually do, Kasamiya decides to wait instead. Kasamiya sits down on the sofa, and the phone in his pocket begins to vibrate. A message arrives from Kirishima, who is currently holding onto Kasamiya's bag. Through the message, Kirishima insists that Kasamiya should not interfere in matters concerning Kurumi and assures him that the bag will be returned safely. Kurumi later steps out from the bathroom, her body still slightly damp. She apologizes for leaving Kasamiya alone. At that moment, Kasamiya stares at her in shock, unable to hide his reaction. He expresses gratitude, internally convinced that what he sees before him feels flawless. Kurumi offers him tea, coffee, or another warm drink. 2 cups of hot beverages are placed side by side. Kasamiya observes the scene and feels that they resemble a newly formed couple. In his thoughts, he imagines how pleasant it would be to live together with Kurumi, sharing a perfect home and being seen by others as an ideal pair. Kurumi, however, simply sits with her head lowered. Kasamiya notices and wonders about her condition. Kurumi explains that she feels extremely tired. Kasamiya falls silent in response. Kurumi then questions whether Kasamiya does not wish to encourage her to talk about what she is going through. Kasamiya only smiles, conveying that even without her explanation, he already understands much of her situation. Kurumi agrees and adds that Kasamiya behaves like a stalker, a remark that carries a sharp edge. Kasamiya reacts with embarrassment, acknowledging that his awareness comes from closely paying attention to her. Kurumi points out that such behavior is exactly what defines a stalker. Kurumi takes a sip from her glass and then walks toward the kitchen bar to retrieve something. Kasamiya calls out, and Kurumi soon returns holding 2 bottles of wine. Kasamiya recognizes that they are alcoholic drinks and notes that both of them are still underage and not permitted to consume them. Kurumi admits that she has never tried alcohol before and expresses a desire to experience it before ending her own life. At that moment, Kasamiya understands that Kurumi has been struggling intensely on her own. Kurumi grips a can of alcohol and suggests holding a drinking party that night. Kasamiya is shocked at first, but he reasons that this might ease Kurumi's suffering, and he ultimately agrees with enthusiasm. Kurumi checks whether Kasamiya is serious about it. Kasamiya confirms that he is. Kurumi asks again, making sure that he does not feel forced into accepting her invitation. Kasamiya reassures her, feeling genuinely happy to be invited for the first time. Kasamiya reaches for a can of alcohol, his movements slightly erratic from the burgeoning excitement. He declares with bold confidence that after this, a full-scale, formal date must be placed at the very top of their agenda. He lifts the drink high into the air, signaling for a toast to celebrate the moment. Kurumi looks at him skeptically, stating firmly that she has no intention of doing anything scandalous, regardless of how much she might drink. Kasamiya's attention shifts to a row of bottles lined up on the table. His eyes widen as they land on one particular bottle boasting a 96% alcohol content, the highest percentage in the world. As he begins to pour the potent liquid into a glass, he pauses, contemplating the amount. He decides to start with just a small splash, given the staggering strength of the spirit. With the glass ready, the two of them stare down at it, their faces a perfect mix of intense curiosity and lingering hesitation. Before taking a sip, Kasamiya suggests they should eat some snacks first, noting that drinking on an empty stomach is a recipe for disaster. As they both reach toward the snack box at the same time, their fingers brush against one another. The contact sends a jolt through Kurumi. She flinches violently, pulling her hand away as if burned. Kasamiya looks at her, confused by the intensity of her reaction. Kurumi stammers that she was simply startled by the sudden touch. To test the waters, Kasamiya gently reaches out and pokes her arm with his finger, which only makes her jump even more. In her flustered state, Kurumi's arm sweeps across the table, accidentally knocking over a bottle of expensive wine. They both watch in slow motion as the dark liquid spills across the floor. Kurumi is mortified, knowing well that the bottle cost a small fortune. Kasamiya immediately drops his playful demeanor and apologizes, blaming himself for messing around too much. However, Kurumi doesn't seem focused on the loss of the wine. Her mind is elsewhere. The night presses on, and by 10 p.m., several bottles sit open and half-empty on the table. The alcohol has begun to take hold. Kurumi, now visibly intoxicated, raises her voice in a sudden outburst of suppressed emotion. She demands to know why she has to be the target of such cruel bullying at school. Kasamiya, equally affected by the drinks, nods aggressively, shouting back that the whole situation makes him furious too. Kurumi squints at him, remarking that he seems to understand her soul remarkably well for someone who is basically a stalker. Kasamiya quickly corrects her, his voice slurred but earnest, insisting that his knowledge comes from a place of pure love, not stalking. Kurumi gazes at him deeply, wondering to herself if love can truly drive someone to such extremes. She asks him point-blank if he really truly likes her. Kasamiya shouts his affirmation at the top of his lungs, swearing that his feelings are genuine. He leans in closer, noting that Kurumi smells strongly of alcohol now. Kurumi retorts by asking if he's had too many whiskey-filled chocolates, teasingly suggesting that he might be getting turned on by the scent of her body. Kasamiya freezes, his heart racing as he wonders if he actually is aroused. He blurs out that if that's the case, then they should proceed with having sex. To his absolute shock, Kurumi doesn't immediately say no. She actually stops to weigh the option in her head. Kasamiya can hardly believe she is considering it, realizing that there is a real possibility here. Kurumi finally speaks, admitting that she understands the depth of his feelings, but points out that they've only really started talking properly tonight. She then confesses, quite bluntly, that she has never done this before and is still a virgin. Kasamiya is stunned by the revelation. Kurumi asks with a hint of relief if he didn't already know that, considering his stalker tendencies. She reaches out and places a hand on his shoulder, drawing him closer. She asks him if he truly wants to go through with it, and tells him to look her straight in the eye. Before he can respond, Kurumi leans in and presses her lips against his. Kasamiya sits there, paralyzed with shock as they share a drunken kiss. When they finally pull apart, they stare at each other, softly whispering one another's names. Kurumi leans forward and wraps her arms around him in a tight embrace. The weight of the day and the alcohol finally take their toll, and she falls fast asleep right there in his lap. Kasamiya is caught completely off guard, unable and unwilling to move her. He eventually gives in to the exhaustion, and the two of them end up lying together on the sofa as the quiet of the night settles over them. The night grows deeper, and the silence of the room is broken only by the soft hum of the appliances. Kurumi opens her eyes slowly, her vision blurry at first as she takes in the sight of the cluttered table. Cans of alcohol remain scattered across the surface, a messy reminder of their earlier antics. Her head throbbed with a dull, persistent ache, and she mutters to herself, wondering why on earth she fell asleep in such a place. She lets out a long, weary yawn, while beside her, Kasamiya simply sits with a dazed, silly grin plastered on his face, clearly still lost in a drunken fog. As the fog in her own mind begins to lift, a sharp memory pierces through her hangover. She freezes, her hand instinctively flying to her lips. The realization hits her like a physical blow. She was the one who kissed Kasamiya last night. Her eyes widen in disbelief as she struggles to reconcile the memory with her own common sense. The hangover makes everything feel surreal. She sits in a stunned silence for a moment before suddenly erupting into a panicked scream, the reality of having kissed someone, and specifically him, finally sinking in. She reminds herself that Kasamiya is the strange, lecherous boy who had the audacity to ask for intimacy the very first time they met. He is the one who claimed to love her out of nowhere. She tries to calm her racing heart by telling herself that perhaps he was too drunk to care or remember what she said. Yet, a small, stubborn part of her mind acknowledges a different side of him. She recalls how he chose to stay by her side when she was at her lowest, putting her well-being above his own desires. She catches herself mid-thought, blushing furiously at the fact that she is actually finding him cool. Her eyes drift back to the table, and she suddenly notices something strange. The cans she thought they had finished are actually still sealed. She realizes with a start that her drunkenness wasn't from the drinks at all, but likely from the high-concentration whiskey chocolates. She had heard that the evaporating alcohol from such sweets could mimic a state of intoxication. She glances at Casamiya, who is still swaying slightly. Since the hour is so late, she decides it would be irresponsible to send him home, resolving to let him stay the night. Her eyes land on the smartphone clutched in his hand, and a spark of curiosity gets the better of her. She gently pries the phone from his grip, causing Casamiya to stir. He mutters a good morning with a heavy, drunken slur, completely oblivious to the fact that it is still the middle of the night. Kurumi plays along with his confusion, asking him if he wants to take a shower to clear his head. He agrees with a drowsy nod. As he stumbles toward the bathroom, he lets out a shout, suggesting that they should pick up where they left off. Kurumi immediately shoots him down, arguing that he was the one who started everything last night and that they were both just under the influence. Casamiya stops in his tracks, looking genuinely offended. He asks if she is trying to play him for a fool, pointing out that she was the one who initiated the kiss. He complains that her accusations make him feel belittled. Kurumi freezes, the memory of her own boldness rushing back. Casamiya doesn't stop there. He bluntly describes how her tongue had been dancing inside his mouth. Panicked and embarrassed, Kurumi covers her ears, screaming at him to just hurry up and get in the shower. After he finishes, Kurumi hands him a glass of water to help him hydrate. She tells him firmly that he will be sleeping on the sofa tonight. Casamiya's face falls instantly, twisting into a mask of profound disappointment. Kurumi asks what that look is for, and Casamiya launches into a practical, if desperate, explanation. He notes that October is ending and the temperature is dropping rapidly. He argues that if they share a bed, their body heat will keep them both warm, concluding that they should sleep together for safety. Kurumi is exasperated. She tells him no, pointing out that her bed is barely large enough for one person. She suspiciously asks if he can truly promise not to try anything weird. Casamiya, sensing a crack in her resolve, replies that he will follow her lead and do only what she wants. Kurumi asks if he's finished his tea yet. When he says yes, she finally relents, giving him permission to sleep in her room for this one night only. Casamiya's disappointment vanishes, replaced by pure, unadulterated joy. He practically skips toward the bedroom, inviting her to join him. Once inside, they both lie down under the same blanket, positioned back-to-back at the very edges of the mattress. Casamiya suddenly feels an overwhelming wave of exhaustion wash over him. His body feels incredibly heavy, a level of fatigue that feels almost unnatural even after a night of drinking. Kurumi, however, isn't ready to sleep. She shifts and eventually climbs on top of him, looking down at his face. With a serious expression, she whispers an invitation for them to finally go all the way. But as she speaks the words, Casamiya's eyes grow heavy. His strength fades, and his consciousness slowly slips away into a deep, dark slumber, leaving her words hanging in the quiet air. This is the history of Koga Kurumi, a girl who, for the longest time, lived as nothing more than an ordinary student born into an equally ordinary family. Up until her third year of junior high school, she was blessed with a steady circle of friends and a life that flowed smoothly, devoid of any significant hardship. However, this period of tranquility was not destined to last forever. The shift began at home. Kurumi's mother became consumed by an overwhelming obsession with her daughter's academic and future success, eventually declaring that Kurumi's achievements were the sole reason she continued to live. Driven by this maternal pressure, Kurumi buried herself in work and study. Without even realizing it, she drifted away from her peers, becoming a complete loner at school. Her peaceful world began to crumble rapidly, culminating in the painful divorce of her parents. It was a heartbreaking ordeal that left her feeling adrift, with no sense of belonging and nowhere to call home. Morning arrives at Kurumi's apartment, bringing a fresh start. Casamiya wakes up and offers a bright, cheerful good morning to Kurumi. He is visibly radiating happiness, clearly moved by the fact that they managed to spend the entire night together under the same roof. Kurumi, meanwhile, is a bundle of nerves. She is already dressed and wearing a cooking apron, busy in the kitchen preparing breakfast. Casamiya notices the deep blush on her cheeks and asks what has her so flustered. Kurumi quickly dismisses his concern, staring intently at the stove and insisting that she is perfectly fine. Kasamiya leans in to inspect the meal she has prepared. His eyes light up at the sight of the food. It looks delicious and professionally made. As they sit down at the table to eat, Kasamiya can't help but praise her, calling her a wonderful wife. Kurumi counters him immediately, asking why he assumes she'll be his wife. She teases that she might very well end up being the wife of someone else entirely. Kasamiya flinches, his heart momentarily stopping at the thought. Kurumi continues, pointing out the cold reality that the two of them aren't even officially dating yet. Kasamiya, perhaps overwhelmed by the food or his own thoughts, misses her last comment and asks her to repeat it. Kurumi, however, refuses to say it again. She simply offers a polite bon appetit and begins to eat, leaving the statement hanging in the air. As they finish their meal, Kasamiya grows serious and asks her about school. Kurumi is already in her full uniform, her posture straight and determined. She answers bluntly that she plans to attend her classes as usual. Kasamiya asks if she is truly serious about going back, especially considering the harsh bullying and the incidents of the previous day. However, he quickly softens his tone, apologizing for questioning her and telling her how happy he is to see her spirit renewed. Kurumi offers a small, resilient smile while she adjusts her school tie in the mirror. She reaffirms that she is okay now, and that is precisely why she feels the need to go. Kasamiya watches her, completely mesmerized. It is exactly this toughness, this inner strength, that made him fall in love with her in the first place. Kurumi asks him why he keeps saying such embarrassing things so casually. Kasamiya offers a sheepish apology, admitting that his inner thoughts just keep spilling out of his mouth before he can stop them. Kurumi shakes her head, deciding to ignore his flattery for now. She tells him to stop dawdling and get ready himself so they won't be late. Kasamiya nods, energized by her command, and begins to gather his things. The pair arrives at the school gates, immediately drawing the attention of their peers. Groups of students huddle together, whispering behind their hands as they speculate about the sudden closeness between Kasamiya and Kurumi. Kasamiya turns his head, his gaze lingering on Kurumi's face. Sensing his stare, Kurumi asks him with a hint of anxiety what he is looking at. Kasamiya answers simply that he was just thinking about how cute she looks today and how much he likes her. Kurumi flinches, her movements becoming awkward and stiff. She asks why he insists on saying such disgusting things in public. Kasamiya feigns a wounded heart, telling her she's being cruel, but Kurumi quickly clarifies that she isn't actually upset. In fact, she feels quite happy. Kasamiya teases her, suggesting she has entered her dear phase, though Kurumi flatly denies it. Their conversation is interrupted by a familiar voice. Kirishima approaches them with a knowing smirk, remarking that the two of them are already heating things up so early in the morning. Kasamiya asks how he could possibly come to that conclusion, while Kirishima just smiles and directs the question to Kurumi. Before she can answer, Kasamiya whispers loudly enough for others to hear that they are currently exchanging a massive amount of love. Kurumi is mortified. She begs him not to say such things out loud, especially since she hasn't agreed to that dynamic. As the three of them walk toward the building, Kirishima expresses genuine surprise that his friend's relationship has progressed so rapidly. Kasamiya nods proudly, claiming their love is mutual, while Kurumi shoots him down, insisting it is strictly a one-sided obsession on his part. The school bell chimes, signaling the start of classes. Kirishima hands Kasamiya his bag, which he had been holding hostage as a joke, and tells them they need to hurry. Kurumi observes the two boys, noting how close their friendship seems to be. Kasamiya takes the opportunity to reiterate that while Kirishima is a great friend, his romantic heart belongs only to Kurumi. He then suddenly suggests that he wants to introduce her to his younger sister. When Kurumi asks why on earth he would do that, Kasamiya explains that his sister is a kind person who will eventually be Kurumi's sister-in-law anyway, so she shouldn't overthink it. Kurumi sighs, wondering why he always speaks as if their marriage is an absolute certainty. She admits she feels like a fool for taking his wild talk seriously. Suddenly, Kasamiya lets out a panicked shout. He finally looks at the clock and realizes they are officially late. Without thinking, he grabs Kurumi's hand firmly and pulls her into a run. They burst through the classroom door, only to find the class rep already standing at the front. The rep sternly informs them of their tardiness and instructs them to report to the guidance office later. As they move toward their desks, Kasamiya notices Ogura sitting alone. She looks uncomfortable and isolated, but he quickly shifts his focus back to Kurumi and their impending meeting with the counselor. At the office, they face a male teacher who surprises them both. He offers a sincere apology to Kurumi for the school's failure to protect her from bullying, and then thanks Kasamiya for stepping in to help her. Because of the circumstances, he waives any punishment for their lateness and sends them back to class. However, beneath the surface of their mourning, a hidden truth lingers in Kurumi's mind. She recalls the previous night, where Kasamiya had spent hours professing his love. It had taken only 10 seconds for him to fall into a dead sleep once they hit the bed, but that wasn't due to exhaustion alone. Kurumi had secretly spiked his drink with sleeping pills. Her original plan was simply to sleep peacefully, yet for some reason, seeing him there had left her feeling unexpectedly aroused. Looking at him now, Kurumi realizes with a silent, heavy heart that she had used the sleeping Kasamiya to satisfy her own hidden desires. After school ends, Kasamiya asks Kurumi whether she plans to visit his house the next day. Kurumi questions the purpose of the visit. Kasamiya explains that he once mentions wanting to introduce Kurumi to his younger sister, and since his sister will be at home for the entire weekend, he feels that the timing is perfect. Kurumi does not expect him to be this serious about the idea. Kasamiya remains confident, convinced of his own sincerity, and holds the belief that he is willing to do anything for Kurumi. He asks again for her opinion. Kurumi considers it briefly and states that she is free the next day, so visiting would be fine. Kasamiya reacts with visible excitement, while Kurumi becomes shy and comments on how excessive his reaction seems. That day, Kasamiya prepares everything in advance. He cleans the trash, clears his search history, and carefully removes anything inappropriate from his room. Outside, Kurumi waits patiently. From where she stands, she hears noisy sounds coming from inside the house along with Kasamiya's voice as he struggles to do his best. Kasamiya's younger sister wonders aloud whether Kasamiya needs to pick up a friend and whether he has enough time. Kasamiya agrees. When he opens the door, Kurumi is already standing in front of the house. Kurumi apologizes for making him wait. Kasamiya, however, becomes completely captivated by Kurumi's appearance. She looks graceful and elegant in her long outfit, and Kasamiya expresses how perfectly it suits her and how happy it makes him feel. His younger sister notices his strange behavior. Kasamiya exaggerates his reaction, thinking that Kurumi is so cute that it nearly gives him a heart attack. Kurumi responds with concern and urges Kasamiya to hurry and show her the house. A young girl with shoulder-length hair greets Kurumi and introduces herself as Kasumi, Kasamiya's younger sister. Kurumi introduces her full name in return. Kasumi reacts as if she has heard the name before and soon realizes that Kurumi is the girl her brother likes the most. Kasumi grows suspicious and wonders whether Kasamiya has kidnapped Kurumi or done something questionable. She continues teasing, questioning how Kasamiya could possibly bring such a beautiful woman home, and even suggests, half in shock, that he might have used hypnosis. Kurumi only lets out a small laugh, while Kasamiya sighs heavily at the accusations directed at him. Kurumi and Kasumi begin holding hands naturally. Kasumi asks many questions about Kurumi, ranging from her hobbies to her favorite food and even her extracurricular activities. It becomes clear that the two of them quickly find good chemistry with each other. Meanwhile, Kasamiya starts to feel left out. Earlier, he hopes that Kurumi and Kasumi can become good friends, especially since Kasumi does not have many close friends due to her busy life in the modeling world. Watching them get along so well, Kasamiya feels as if he has been overtaken by his own sister. Kasumi looks slightly surprised and asks whether Kasamiya truly has a special kind of relationship with Kurumi. Kurumi clarifies that there is no such relationship. When they arrive inside Kasamiya's room, Kasumi asks whether her brother is serious about gathering everyone there. Kasamiya agrees, explaining that the first thing he wants to do together is play games. The three of them each hold a game controller. Kasamiya notices that Kasumi positions herself between him and Kurumi and questions the reason. Kasumi explains that if they sit next to each other, Kasamiya might take advantage of the situation. She jokingly warns Kurumi that her brother is indecent and instructs her to report anything suspicious. Kasumi even shares her phone contact so Kurumi can reach her anytime, and Kurumi expresses her gratitude. They begin playing a 3-character racing game. In the end, Kasumi takes first place, Kurumi comes in second, and Kasamiya finishes last. Kasumi remarks that she plays more often than her brother. Kurumi congratulates Kasumi and offers sincere praise. Kasamiya then notices his stomach growling and announces that it is time for dinner. He prepares the ingredients himself. Kurumi asks whether he needs help, but Kasamiya refuses, explaining that Kurumi is a guest and everything has already been arranged. Even so, Kasumi remains doubtful. The meal is finally completed. Kasamiya prepares a large pot of yashinabe using his own secret seasoning. Everyone is amazed by the dish, as it looks incredibly delicious. Kasamiya treats the meal as an expression of his feelings toward Kurumi and even feels so moved that he almost cries. The three of them enthusiastically begin eating. After the meal, everyone feels content and happy. Kasamiya suggests that Kurumi and Kasumi relax together. Kasumi invites Kurumi to play games again, and Kurumi agrees. While they play, Kasumi asks Kurumi whether she has a relationship with her brother. Kurumi becomes shy and explains that she is not dating Kasamiya. Kasumi then asks whether Kurumi and Kasamiya have ever held hands. Kurumi confirms that they have. Kasumi continues by asking whether they have hugged, and Kurumi confirms that as well. When Kasumi asks about kissing, Kurumi's face turns red. Kurumi realizes that Kasumi notices her reaction and asks her not to pay attention or stare at her. However, Kasumi presses on with one final question that she insists must be answered. Kasumi asks whether Kurumi likes Kasamiya. Kurumi's face grows even redder, her eyes filling with restrained tears, and she finally admits that she does. As the night grows late, Kasamiya waits outside the house, already wearing his jacket and preparing to escort Kasumi to the station. Inside the house, Kurumi walks alongside Kasumi. Suddenly, Kasumi gives Kurumi a push from behind. Kurumi is confused by the sudden action, while Kasumi explains through her behavior that she is returning Kurumi to her older brother. Kasamiya reacts immediately, expressing that he has never lent Kurumi to Kasumi because Kurumi is meant to remain by his side forever. Kurumi responds by asserting that she does not belong to Kasamiya. Kasamiya answers by reframing his words, implying that Kurumi is the most important person in his life. Meanwhile, Kasumi hides behind a wall and makes it clear that her homework is not finished yet, creating an excuse so that Kurumi and Kasamiya can spend time together. Kasamiya then tells Kurumi that he will walk her to the station instead. Kurumi agrees, and the two of them begin walking side by side in an awkward silence. After a short while, Kasamiya offers his jacket to Kurumi so she will not feel cold. Kurumi accepts the gesture and thanks him for his kindness. As she puts on the jacket, she feels its warmth spreading through her body. They continue walking, both of them blushing slightly, their expressions filled with quiet embarrassment. At one moment, both of them feel the urge to speak at the same time. Kurumi allows Kasamiya to speak first. She becomes aware of her own heartbeat, which feels fast and unsteady. Kasamiya speaks honestly, expressing that his feelings for Kurumi are overwhelming and that he can no longer hold them back. He then seeks to understand how Kurumi feels about him. Kurumi's heart pounds intensely, as if it might burst from her chest. She responds by admitting that she does not hate Kasamiya. Kasamiya interprets this response with hopeful excitement, wondering if it means that Kurumi loves him as well. He notices Kurumi's face growing redder by the second. Filled with enthusiasm, Kasamiya impulsively suggests that instead of going to the station, they should go straight to the city hall and register for marriage. Kurumi reacts with surprise and questions whether Kasamiya truly wants to marry her. She then expresses that she does not want to get married. Kasamiya is confused by her response and insists that if marriage is too much, he is willing to lower his expectations. He clenches his fist and clearly states his feelings, asking Kurumi to become his girlfriend instead. Kurumi is deeply moved and agrees. After that moment, they resume walking, but the atmosphere between them has clearly changed. While holding hands, Kasamiya suddenly stops. Kurumi asks what is wrong. Kasamiya suggests that perhaps they could take one step further than usual. He positions them so that they are now facing each other directly. Kurumi refuses. Kasamiya questions the reason, and Kurumi explains that she only wants to do intimate things in private, as it feels embarrassing to do them in public. Kurumi wraps her arms around Kasamiya and expresses that a hug is enough. Kasamiya accepts her wish, stating that if that is what Kurumi wants, he will restrain himself for now. He asks whether Kurumi feels happy. Kurumi answers that she does. Kasamiya admits that he wants to be together with Kurumi all the time. Kurumi is slightly surprised, and although she does not dislike being with him, she decides to be patient for the day. Kurumi rises onto her toes and expresses that she likes Kasamiya. She then says goodbye and leaves, walking away and leaving Kasamiya standing there in shock. After some time, Kurumi arrives at her own home. She enters, turns on the lights, and hangs Kasamiya's jacket carefully. She sits down behind the door of her room, thinking about Kasamiya and his confession earlier that night. In truth, Kurumi does not intend for things to go this far, yet she finds herself unable to suppress her feelings any longer. She feels restless, aware of a growing desire toward Kasamiya that she can no longer deny. In that quiet moment, Kurumi reflects on herself, realizing that these emotions are something she has never fully acknowledged before. On Monday, Kasamiya feels how unbearably crowded the train is. For a long time, a sense of depression has been what pushes him to go to school each day. But now he realizes that this feeling no longer accompanies him, and he believes it will not return from this point onward. As he walks alongside Kurumi, Kasamiya suddenly blurts out that everything feels perfect. Kurumi reacts by wondering what prompts that reaction. Kasamiya admits that he is simply too happy and lets it slip without thinking. Kurumi, meanwhile, tries to conceal her own happiness. After a brief hesitation, Kurumi awkwardly admits that she feels happy as well. She expresses it shyly, her voice lacking confidence, which makes Kasamiya ask her to say it again. Kurumi assumes that Kasamiya is deliberately teasing her, but Kasamiya insists that he genuinely does not hear her clearly. Kurumi believes he is lying. In response, she lightly bumps into Kasamiya's hand, causing him to feel pain and complain that Kurumi is being rough with him. Once they are in the classroom, Kasamiya feels restless and impatient. He feels fortunate just to be able to spend time near Kurumi, yet at the same time, he finds himself eagerly waiting for the seat reshuffling scheduled for the next day. Kurumi explains that, in her opinion, the current distance between them is just right. Kasamiya asks for the reason. Kurumi explains that being any closer makes it difficult for her to focus on the lesson. Kasamiya takes this as a sign that Kurumi loves him more deeply than he originally thinks. Kurumi is startled by that assumption. She admits that she is happy because she also loves Kasamiya, but at the same time, her heart struggles to accept these feelings, and she asks Kasamiya to stop pushing the matter further. After that, Kurumi takes 2 bento boxes out of her bag and hands one of them to Kasamiya. Kasamiya feels delighted to receive a bento from Kurumi, whom he playfully regards as his wife in his own mind. Kurumi immediately denies that label, making it clear that she is not his wife. Despite that, the two of them eat together. Kasamiya feels that the food tastes especially good, believing that Kurumi's secret seasoning comes through strongly. Kurumi thinks Kasamiya is foolish, but she allows him to say such things anyway. When Kurumi tastes her own cooking, she notices that it is slightly burnt and points this out to Kasamiya. Kasamiya agrees that it does seem a bit overcooked. Kurumi grows gloomy after realizing this, but Kasamiya reassures her that the food still tastes good regardless. His reaction softens her mood. After classes end, Kurumi prepares to go home. Kasamiya, however, invites her to hang out for a short while before leaving. Kurumi asks where they would go. Kasamiya suggests the game center, or anywhere else they feel like. Kurumi decides that she wants to go and agrees, adding that she only plans to stay for a little while. When they arrive at the game center, both of them are surprised by how many claw machines fill the space. Rows of machines line the area, creating a colorful and noisy atmosphere. Instead of rushing into anything, they decide to walk around first and simply look. After that, they try several claw machines one by one until they eventually stop and take a break. While sitting down, Kurumi comments on how numerous the claw machines really are. Kasamiya pays close attention to her reaction and wonders whether Kurumi is enjoying herself. Kurumi admits that she is having fun, even though she feels unsure about how to properly enjoy places like this. She does not aim to win any prizes from the claw machines, and she also notices that the battle-style arcade games look quite difficult. Kasamiya takes a moment to think, and then an idea comes to him. He suggests moving to a basketball shooting game, believing that Kurumi might enjoy something more straightforward and active. Kurumi gives it a try, throwing the ball toward the hoop. The ball goes in cleanly, and Kasamiya reacts enthusiastically, applauding her success. Kurumi feels pleased by the result and the encouragement. Encouraged by the moment, Kurumi proposes that they compete to score points against each other. Kasamiya agrees without hesitation. However, when it is his turn, the ball he throws fails to go into the hoop. He reacts by acknowledging Kurumi's energy and stamina. Kurumi responds with confidence, agreeing with his assessment and attributing it to her background as a model. She explains that she usually exercises regularly to maintain her body, though she also admits that recently she has not been very active, which makes her feel slightly out of breath now. Kasamiya offers help in his own clumsy way, but Kurumi immediately labels his behavior as improper. Shortly after, Kurumi suddenly realizes something and pauses. Kasamiya notices the change and becomes curious about what has caught her attention. Kurumi then suggests that they take photos together in a photo booth. Kasamiya readily agrees, already imagining the photos being displayed someday at his wedding with Kurumi. He asks where they should take the photos, and Kurumi chooses the booth herself. As they approach the selected photo booth, they suddenly hear muffled sounds coming from inside, along with signs that someone inside does not want their presence to be noticed outside. Both Kurumi and Kasamiya are startled by this unexpected situation. Instinctively, Kasamiya grabs Kurumi's hand and pulls her away from the booth. A moment later, Kurumi asks him to stop. Kasamiya realizes that he panics and apologizes for acting without thinking. Kurumi, however, reassures him through her reaction that it does not bother her, and the tension between them quickly fades as they move on from the moment. Kurumi herself feels deeply shocked, and Kasamiya experiences the same feeling, because neither of them expects to encounter a couple behaving indecently in a place like that. Kasamiya reacts by expressing the idea that if such a thing were to happen, it should take place in a luxurious hotel or a similar setting. Kurumi becomes confused by his comment and wonders what he means by it. Kasamiya explains that he is merely referring to an appropriate place where a first experience should be created. Kurumi is taken aback by this explanation, as it causes her to recall the time when Kasamiya stays over at her place. The memory catches her off guard. Kasamiya notices her reaction and senses that something is off, prompting concern through his expression. Kurumi quickly dismisses it, indicating that it is nothing important. As night falls, Kasamiya begins to feel cold. While walking together, they come across a taiyaki stand. Kasamiya decides to order 2 taiyaki and hands the payment to the vendor. After receiving them, he gives 1 taiyaki to Kurumi. Kurumi accepts it and expresses her gratitude. She then becomes curious about the price, but Kasamiya deliberately avoids answering because he intends to treat her. For Kurumi, however, that does not feel acceptable, as she believes things like this should be handled properly. Kasamiya insists that he simply wants to treat Kurumi and asks her to accept it as a sign of his affection for her. Kurumi responds by reducing the gesture to a concrete value, viewing it as a sign of affection worth 120 yen. Kasamiya reacts by wondering whether that amount is insufficient. Kurumi pauses briefly, then takes a bite of her taiyaki. After tasting it, she decides that it is more than enough. Kasamiya then attempts to eat his own taiyaki, only to realize that it is still very hot. Kurumi reacts by teasing him and labeling him as foolish. When they arrive at the station, Kasamiya wonders whether Kurumi would be willing to hold hands. Kurumi reaches out and takes his hand, which surprises Kasamiya. Kurumi notices his reaction and questions the reason for his surprise. Kasamiya admits that he expects her to refuse, as she often does. Kurumi then acknowledges her own feelings, making it clear that she likes Kasamiya as well. Kurumi observes that Kasamiya's face is turning red, and Kasamiya responds by teasing Kurumi for blushing too. Kurumi denies it, feeling flustered, and wonders whether she may let go of his hand. Kasamiya refuses and questions her reason for wanting to pull away, maintaining their closeness as the moment lingers. The next day, Ogura becomes the person Kasamiya hates the most in the world, as he holds her responsible for pushing Kurumi toward the brink of suicide. That feeling lingers heavily in his mind. Kasamiya then expresses that there is something he wants to discuss with Kirishima. Kirishima immediately assumes that the topic must be Kurumi, who has now become Kasamiya's first girlfriend. Kasamiya is caught off guard by this assumption and reacts with visible surprise. Kirishima calmly explains that the situation is obvious, so obvious that anyone who observes them closely can easily understand what has happened between Kasamiya and Kurumi. Kasamiya decides to set that topic aside for another time, explaining through his attitude that there is a different and more pressing issue he wants to address. Kirishima finds this unusual, and remarks that it is rare for Kasamiya to show interest in something other than Kurumi. He then presses further, wanting to know what is going on. Kasamiya questions whether everything that happens to Ogura is truly his own fault. Kirishima responds by making it clear that the responsibility lies entirely with Ogura herself. Kirishima reflects on the situation and acknowledges that after the incident, Ogura indeed loses her place within the class. However, after considering everything carefully, Kirishima believes that none of it can be blamed on Kasamiya. From Kirishima's perspective, the atmosphere in the classroom suddenly changes in a way that feels unpleasant and suffocating, even though he admits that he may not have the right to complain about it. Kasamiya quietly disagrees with that conclusion, feeling that the situation is not so simple. Before the conversation can go any further, the teacher enters the classroom and makes an announcement. Since it is now November, the students are instructed to change their seating arrangements. The class reacts with excitement, and many students show clear signs of happiness. Kasamiya discreetly signals to Kurumi that he is pleased by this news. The teacher explains that the drawing will begin from the far left side of the classroom. However, the teacher suddenly realizes that the lottery papers have been forgotten. The teacher asks the students to wait for a moment and then leaves the classroom to retrieve them. While the teacher is gone, Kasamiya turns his attention back to Kurumi and wonders why she does not return the two-finger gesture he makes earlier. Kurumi explains that if she responds, people around them might assume they are a couple. Kasamiya accepts that idea easily, as he considers it to be the truth. Kurumi, however, feels that the situation is more complicated than that, and her reaction reflects a sense of hesitation. At that moment, Kasamiya overhears other students talking among themselves. They express their unwillingness to sit next to Ogura, fearing that they might become targets of bullying. Some of them openly blame Ogura for the harassment that has taken place in the past. Hearing this, Kurumi suddenly feels irritated. Her hands clench tightly as frustration builds inside her. Unable to remain silent, Kurumi stands up and forcefully demands that everyone stop this behavior. Kasamiya is taken by surprise, and the rest of the class turns their attention toward Kurumi. In that tense moment, Ogura briefly looks in Kurumi's direction. After that short glance, Ogura abruptly runs out of the classroom, leaving behind a heavy silence that hangs in the air. Ogura runs out of the classroom in tears, her emotions overflowing as she flees the scene. Seeing this, Kasamiya immediately chases after her, calling out as he goes. Kirishima, who witnesses Kasamiya suddenly leaving, asks what is happening. Kasamiya briefly explains that Kurumi is currently doing her best to hold things together, and because of that, he asks Kirishima to take responsibility for maintaining the situation in the classroom. Kirishima is left confused by what Kasamiya means, unable to fully grasp the urgency behind his words. Kasamiya, however, insists that there is no time to explain further, and he quickly runs off to pursue Ogura toward the school rooftop. When Kasamiya reaches the rooftop, he finds Ogura leaning against the fence, overwhelmed by her thoughts and questioning why she has continued acting the way she has until now. Despite everything, Ogura admits that Kurumi seems incredibly admirable to her. Kasamiya calls out to Ogura, and she asks whether he truly hears what she is saying. Kasamiya answers that if it is a declaration of rivalry directed at him, then he hears it very clearly. At the same time, he admits that he had assumed Ogura genuinely hated Kurumi. Ogura explains that she does hate Kurumi, yet she feels conflicted because Kurumi went so far as to stand up and defend her. Kasamiya then asks why Ogura ran out of the classroom so suddenly. Ogura replies that she did not want the entire class to see her in such a miserable state, and that she also wanted to apologize to Kurumi, hoping to become her friend, or at least something close to that. Kasamiya considers this, and responds that he thinks it is a good idea. Ogura then asks why Kasamiya is not angry with her. Kasamiya turns the question back, wondering why he should be angry in the first place. Ogura explains that everything seems to be progressing too smoothly, almost unnaturally. From Kasamiya's point of view, if things are going smoothly, then that should be a good thing. Ogura hesitantly wonders what would happen if their relationship were to become more than just friendship. Kasamiya suggests that it would be better to start by becoming friends first, and only think about anything beyond that later on. Ogura agrees with his reasoning. Kasamiya then extends his hand, inviting Ogura to return to the classroom together. As Ogura tries to voice another concern, Kasamiya reassures her that it is fine, explaining that Kurumi has already begun to recover from her lowest point. Hearing this, Ogura finally feels a sense of relief. As they turn to leave, Ogura suddenly stumbles and nearly falls, but Kasamiya quickly catches her and steadies her. Ogura thanks him, and Kasamiya responds casually, saying it is nothing. At that moment, the rooftop door opens and Kurumi appears. She sees Ogura in Kasamiya's arms and immediately interprets the scene as an act of betrayal. Kasamiya is taken completely by surprise. Both Kasamiya and Ogura look toward Kurumi, who stands there with an expression full of anger and frustration. Kurumi grabs Kasamiya by the arm, clearly upset. Kasamiya tries to explain that the situation is not what Kurumi thinks it is. Kurumi, however, points out that from her perspective, Kasamiya and Ogura are clearly holding each other. Kasamiya then explains that Ogura almost fell and that he simply caught her to keep her from getting hurt. He apologizes for causing a misunderstanding. Kurumi asks if that explanation is truly the truth. Kasamiya responds by asking whether Kurumi believes he would lie to her. Kurumi admits that she does not want to think of Kasamiya as someone who would deceive her. She then embraces him tightly. Kasamiya reassures her that the only person he likes is Kurumi, not just now, but also in the future. Kurumi eventually pulls away from the hug, embarrassed, and remarks that it is humiliating. Kurumi then turns to Ogura and asks whether Kasamiya is cute. Ogura agrees without hesitation. Kurumi becomes annoyed and demands to know what Ogura has been saying. She then hides behind Kasamiya and explains that she has already warned everyone in the classroom, prompting Ogura to express her gratitude. Kurumi adds a final clarification, telling Ogura not to misunderstand her feelings. She admits that she still has not forgiven Ogura for bullying her and for pouring water on her, and that those wounds have not healed yet. Even so, Kurumi believes that she is the only one who still feels any sympathy toward Ogura at all. Ogura falls silent, her thoughts stopping as the weight of the moment settles in. Kurumi explains that she understands the situation precisely because she chose to help Ogura. Kurumi reflects on how, at that time, there was no one who reached out to help her, and she remembers how deeply she despised that feeling. It is a sensation that feels sharp, painful, and suffocating, something that pierces the heart and lingers with quiet suffering. Because of that experience, Kurumi does not want anyone else to go through the same kind of loneliness and despair. Everything she does for Ogura comes from that reason alone, and she asks Ogura not to misunderstand her actions, since she has still not forgiven what Ogura did. Ogura responds by saying that she never expects Kurumi to forgive her. She does not want to search for excuses, because she knows her actions went far beyond what was acceptable. Ogura admits that she truly was foolish, someone who understood nothing at the time, until she finally experienced the same pain herself. She asks to be allowed, at the very least, to say this one thing, expressing her sincere apology to Kurumi for all the cruelty she has shown until now. Hearing this, Kurumi feels both relieved and quietly happy. Ogura apologizes again, while crying uncontrollably. Kurumi steps closer, gently stroking Ogura's head and asking her to stop crying. Even so, Ogura continues to sob, unable to hold back her emotions. Meanwhile, Kasamiya casually comments that he also wants his head to be patted. Kurumi responds by making it clear that this is not the right moment for jokes. Ogura keeps apologizing repeatedly, while Kurumi reassures her that she understands how she feels. Kasamiya notices Ogura leaning closer, as if she is about to embrace Kurumi, and he quickly pulls Kurumi into his own arms instead. Kasamiya feels a wave of jealousy and thinks that the person holding Kurumi like that should be him. The next morning, Kasamiya arrives at the classroom and greets Ogura as usual. Ogura asks about Kurumi's whereabouts. Kasamiya explains that Kurumi seems to have overslept. Upon hearing this, Ogura suddenly looks drained while holding her phone. Kasamiya asks what is wrong, but Ogura dismisses it as nothing. Kasamiya then notices an image displayed on Ogura's phone, a picture of an anime hero character, and becomes curious about it. Kasamiya realizes that Ogura seems to like it. Ogura explains that her father is a big fan of that character, and she only looks at it from time to time, though it is clear that she likes it as well. Kasamiya finds this unexpected. Ogura admits that she has been hiding this interest all along. Kasamiya points out that now she is openly showing it. Ogura notices several female students talking about her nearby and remarks that there is no one left she needs to hide it from anymore. Kasamiya casually refers to Ogura as a loner. Ogura then asks whether Kasamiya truly hates her. Kasamiya responds by saying that he does not hate Ogura, but rather that he likes her too much. Ogura is shocked by this statement and wonders what he means. Kasamiya leaves it to Ogura to think about on her own. Ogura then says that she will tell Kurumi that Kasamiya does not hate her. Kasamiya tells her there is no need to report something so unclear. Kasamiya then asks whether Ogura has become very close to Kurumi. Ogura answers that she is not sure, but up to now, she and Kurumi talk on the phone every night. Kasamiya is stunned by this revelation. Ogura confirms it and adds that Kurumi usually ends up falling asleep, and that Kurumi's sleeping voice sounds very cute to her. Kasamiya becomes even more shocked, realizing that Ogura has been hearing Kurumi sleep, and he understands that this is likely the reason Kurumi overslept. Ogura admits that this might indeed be the case. Kasamiya asks what Ogura and Kurumi talk about during those long calls. Ogura explains that she apologizes again, and also explains the reasons behind why she treated Kurumi the way she did. Kasamiya comes to understand this. Ogura then asks whether Kasamiya does not want to know more. For Kasamiya, however, this is not the right time to hear those details. Suddenly, Kurumi approaches to greet both Kasamiya and Ogura. Kasamiya returns the greeting instantly, unable to help himself from commenting that Kurumi looks especially cute today. Flushed with embarrassment, Kurumi mutters that he should save those kinds of compliments for when they are alone together. Ogura joins in to greet Kurumi as well, but Kurumi falls into a tense, awkward silence. Noticing her change in mood, Kasamiya asks if something is wrong. Instead of answering directly, Kurumi quietly requests that Kasamiya comes over to her house after school. Once classes end, Kasamiya arrives at Kurumi's home as requested. Kurumi welcomes him in, telling him that he should treat her place as if it were his own. Kasamiya offers a small apology for making her wait. As he settles in, his eyes widen in surprise when he notices Kurumi's outfit. Her thighs are clearly visible, a sight that catches him completely off guard. He asks her directly if he should interpret this as her attempt to seduce him. Kurumi's face turns bright red, and she defensively claims that isn't the case at all, insisting she has no intention of being a temptress. Kasamiya presses the issue, questioning why she chose such an outfit when she usually wears tight, long trousers. Kurumi snaps at him, explaining that she did it because he seemed to be having such a great time earlier. When Kasamiya asks for clarification, Kurumi's frustration boils over. She points out that he looked like he was having a wonderful time talking with Ogura that morning. She clarifies that she isn't trying to be difficult, nor is she telling him that he isn't allowed to talk to other girls. She hates the idea of being a controlling person. She even admits that she doesn't mind that he speaks to others differently than he speaks to her. Kasamiya listens to her long explanation and reaches a simple, blunt conclusion. Kurumi is jealous. Kurumi lets out a forced laugh, adamantly denying that she feels even a spark of jealousy. Kasamiya simply smiles at her, remarking that she is incredibly cute. Annoyed by his grin, Kurumi tells him to stop smiling to himself like that. Kasamiya notes that even though he showers her with love every single day, she still finds a way to get jealous. Kurumi finally confesses that her insecurity stems from the fact that Ogura has a larger chest than she does. Kasamiya asks if that is the real reason she is showing off her thighs. Caught in her own logic, Kurumi becomes a mix of angry and embarrassed, begging him to stop bringing it up. Kasamiya then makes a sudden request, asking Kurumi to start calling him by his given name. Kurumi is taken aback by the suddenness of the idea. Kasamiya points out that she already addresses Kirishima and Ogura by their first names, so he wonders why he is the only one left out. Kurumi admits that for her, saying his name feels far too embarrassing. Kasamiya suggests that he wants to use this moment to make her say it, but Kurumi refuses. She tells him not to take advantage of the situation. If she is going to call him by his name, she wants it to be because she truly wants to do it on her own terms. Kasamiya accepts her reasoning and tells her he will look forward to that day. Standing up, Kasamiya looks her in the eye and declares that he loves her more than anyone else in the entire world. Kurumi, touched and shy, offers him a sincere thank you. Kasamiya tells her that gratitude isn't necessary because speaking his truth is simply his nature. Kurumi grows quiet, admitting how painful it felt to be alone all the time. She acknowledges that if it weren't for him, she might not even be standing there today. Taking a deep breath, she finally thanks him for saving her on that fateful day on the rooftop. Then, she softly calls him by his first name. The sound of it leaves Kasamiya stunned and speechless. Kurumi nudges him, asking him to say something in response. Breaking the silence, Kasamiya abruptly asks her to marry him. Kurumi tells him that they can't do that yet, asking him to wait until they are both adults. Kasamiya suggests that they should grow up together and face the challenges of adulthood side by side. He then tells her to relax, mentioning he heard that the pain only lasts for the first time. Kurumi murmurs that, in her experience, it felt good right from the start. Kasamiya, confused, asks her to repeat what she just said because he didn't catch it. Kurumi quickly dismisses it, saying it was nothing. She calls him a pervert once again, but Kasamiya argues that he isn't a pervert, he is her husband. Kurumi corrects him, stating that he isn't her husband yet, but he is her boyfriend. Kasamiya smiles, agreeing with her. He asks her one more time if she will marry him someday. Kurumi finally agrees, and together they make a promise to get married when the time is right.